actions are significantly impacting the environment. Agencies typically fulfill their NEPA responsibilities by applying one of three levels of environmental analysis. One is known as a categorical exclusion, and these are established as part of agency-specific NEPA and implementing procedures. Those are actions that are considered to not have a significant impact on the environment, and that kind of ends the environmental analysis. The next level of analysis is an environmental assessment. Requires a little bit more robust look into how that action might impact the area that it's working in. And the final and most intense environmental review is known as an environmental impact statement. So FirstNet is an independent, has an independent regulatory requirement to comply with NEPA, as well as delegated authority from the Secretary of Commerce to develop its own capacity in order to implement NEPA and analyze and make final determinations related to the environmental impact of the NPSBN. As part of that process and making an analysis of what the impacts of the NPSBN would be, one of the strategic decisions that was made a few years ago was to prepare what's known as a programmatic environmental impact statement. Now, so NEPA regulations allow agencies to conduct programmatic or basically broad or high-level NEPA environmental reviews of the impacts of their proposed programs or actions. So after they've done this high-level, broad programmatic, those will have to be followed at a subsequent time by individual reviews, kind of on a site-specific basis, typically of when they know specifically where their action is taking place. So the programmatic environmental impact statements that FirstNet have completed at this point have been set up through 5 regions of the country, which Colorado is part of the central region. In the development of a programmatic or even an environmental impact statement generally, one of the key aspects of the regulations require that the federal entities hold scoping and then notice and comment meetings on their draft documents to give a very transparent and fair opportunity for the public to understand what they're proposing and what the projected impact on the environment will be. With that in mind, that's what this meeting next week is set up to do. It's to really give the public, meaning any federal, state, local, or private citizen, the opportunity to come and discuss this programmatic environmental impact statement, the details of what FirstNet is eyeing as the main environmental issues at this point, and for us to receive feedback on that. So as we prepare over the next year to finalize these programmatic documents, that we've been able to incorporate and try to respond to those comments. And that kind of leads us into where we are with that meeting. That being said, I'm more than happy to open it up for any questions about the process, about NEPA, or any questions your team might have.
Thank you, Eli. In the agenda, I did give everybody the link to the documents on the Federal Register. All of the states in our central region are listed there, and we certainly didn't expect any of you necessarily to go in and review those. But does anybody have any questions in general about this process? Okay. Well, our team will be attending on Tuesday evening, and we will provide an update to you at the next meeting about how that went and if we had any follow-up information for all of you. Did you have anything to add on it, Brian?
No, the document is quite a thorough document. We've reviewed it. I've kind of gone through it. So far, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, essentially to narrow it down, basically what it says is that for all the various environmental impacts, whether that be wildlife or wetlands or soil or air, that basically they've classified it into what things would have no impacts or very little impact, moderate impact, and then major impact. So for example, it said any pulling fiber through existing conduit would have no impact other than where the handholds are, that kind of thing. So at first glance, it looks like a fairly straightforward approach to what the environmental impacts are. It's fairly similar to what we dealt with in Adams County for the pilot project. So I guess, Eli, my only question would be, can you give an update on how this is going to apply in opt-in and opt-out states?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So one of the key tenets of a programmatic NEPA analysis is that, as I said earlier, it's broad or high level, right? And so what you're trying to do in these documents, as you know, Brian, is you're trying to get down to as much of the environmental analysis on the actions you think you're going to take to really understand those impacts generally, right? But in any environmental analysis, where you really understand what the impacts are is once you know where the site-specific actions are taking place. And so the programmatic documents are intended, there's a term under the regulations called tiering, which allows agencies and their applicants who are preparing NEPA documents on their behalf, which in the cases of state opt-outs would be the case, to tier off or essentially incorporate by reference key pieces of those analysis from the programmatic environmental impact statements, right? And incorporate that into any final document related to a site-specific action or project-specific action that might be taking place. And so in the context of any state that assumes responsibility for deploying a radio access network in that state, they would be able to utilize the information in the final PISs, the data and analysis, to help construct whatever review and analysis will be required. You don't really know, you can't make that determination until you see what the full proposed project is. FirstNet will have to undertake a similar analysis for itself as well. But once that documentation has been prepared, then FirstNet, because one thing that's key to remember about NEPA is that FirstNet, or the agencies that are responsible for NEPA, are the ones that have to make the final determination on what that impact would be. And so a good example that I can give, and it sounds like I know Brian's familiar with ADCOM and the BTOP program. The ADCOM project prepared an environmental impact statement that was prepared and provided to NTIA at that time for review and final determination on that impact. In the case of FirstNet or a state opt-out, and specifically to FirstNet NEPA responsibility, in the preparation of an environmental assessment for FirstNet, the state would be able to utilize the information and data in the programmatic document, incorporate that by reference or tier off of it to help streamline how detailed certain parts of that document would be. If the analysis has already been done related to handholds or something else, well, maybe that's something that's just incorporated by reference and you don't have to do a deeper dive on. Whereas where there'll be gaps because the context of a specific site, maybe it's in an area that potentially has an endangered species or something otherwise, would still require additional analysis that, would have to be provided. But I think the key tenet is that whether it's FirstNet or it's a state assuming RAN responsibilities, there's going to be further environmental analysis likely required in most cases, and the PEISs will be able to be utilized by both entities, especially if you think about it in the context, in the end, and again, I focus specifically on FirstNet's responsibility under NEPA. Those are our documents, and so anything that would occur under a site-specific analysis related to a lease agreement with FirstNet, which would be the case for a state assuming RAN responsibility, FirstNet could utilize that to help make the final decision, and the state could utilize the information to help develop their documentation.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That is good to hear. Do you know, are you guys, and this might still be a premature question, so is that going to be presented or discussed somehow in the state plan? So obviously we get the state plan. At that time, we should have some of this information about, okay, where are the specific towers? What kind of work are we looking at? Will there be a discussion of potential environmental impacts in the state plan so we can kind of gauge that and see, I'm thinking, obviously there'll be minimal environmental impact in the metropolitan areas, but, the state plan might show some rural development, and it might say, hey, we could bump into some environmental issues with this rural development. Do you know if that's going to be integrated at all into the state plan?
I don't. I think not knowing, I think it might just be early at this point, not having a solution finalized to know how or how we would integrate that. But it definitely has to be a consideration, right? Because under NEPA, before any action can, take place, before agency can move forward with any action or any kind of deployment, it's got to finalize and make its NEPA determinations on that action. So,
yeah.
So
definitely. And last question, kind of technical question. I remember back when we were doing AdCom, once you got your initial clearance, and if something changed, so let's say you changed the tower or we changed a run for some fiber, you had to stop and reanalyze that change. It halted the entire project. Is that going to be the same for this effort? So that for in either an opt-in or an opt-out solution, let's say we opt in and the partner says, "Oh crap, we got to redo 10 of these towers," and you have to go redo the environmental analysis. Is that going to stop the entire project in our state?
That's a great question, Brian. One of the nuances that I don't think I have the answer to, but is something that probably will need to be addressed, is how NTIA will deal with the environmental analysis under NEPA that they have to undertake related to the grant. And so although there'll be coordination between FCC, FirstNet, and NTIA, who all have individual NEPA responsibility and requirements that they as separate entities have to deal with, there's some nuance in that related to the issuing of a grant versus how it might be approached in an opt-out state, which I don't think NTIA has had a chance to opine on, and so I'm not sure quite how that would play out. But it's a very good question.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I have a quick question. This is Paula. So I'm a little confused about the statement and the timing. I guess the environmental impact statement will come out, and is it to save time or money when we get the whoever is selected and they have their plan? I mean, or are we going to have to go back out and do another impact statement after we have all the information that we need to build out the network? So that was one question. And then to follow up on Brian, on this state, I mean, most of the state is going to be rural or mountainous, and I'm not sure how this is going to apply without having to do a lot more work.
Thanks, Paula. I think in response to your first question, so programmatics are not a final determination in most cases, right? And to get down to the level of analysis that you need to make a final determination really gets down to the site-specific actions that are going to take place. And so programmatics benefit programs like FirstNet in really two primary ways. One is that it does streamline the process a little bit. So when you know where you're going, you know where you're hanging that antenna or putting that tower, that you've already done hopefully what's a level of information and analysis that's deep enough to really streamline any other analysis you need to do, right? So as Brian mentioned, for example, under the AdCom project, the environmental stuff was very all-intensive and incorporated a lot of review and took a lot of time. Let's say hypothetically, without a programmatic, it would take a year to clear a site. With the programmatic, the goal would be, okay, well, we've done a lot of the analysis already. We know this is kind of generally where we're at. Now we know where the specific site is. You can analyze that site and maybe reduce that review time into 6 months, right, instead of 12. So that's one of the major benefits of a programmatic analysis. The other key reason that FirstNet undertook this effort related specifically to, without going into too much legalese or nuance, a concept known as improper segmentation under NEPA. And so NEPA is a law that requires that a complete project be looked at and not broken into pieces or segments improperly, essentially trying to say that the project has to be looked at it as a whole, because if you don't look at it as a whole, sometimes you can miss the environmental impacts that it might be having. So one of the concerns with a nationwide program like FirstNet is making sure that we, because we have 50 separate state plans that needed to be prepared and other actions that needed to be taken, such as the core network and other things related to the nationwide network. In order to avoid this segmentation issue, a programmatic EIS in our case, and one of these for each reason, helps turn all of our actions essentially into one action that we can kind of, as I mentioned before, tear off without having that issue of, are they segmenting, are they breaking up, are they missing some environmental review? So those are the two reasons that a programmatic becomes important for FirstNet and just as on a general basis. To your second question, there is going to be additional environmental analysis that's going to be needed. And, to the extent, and you bring up a great point, here in Colorado, we've got mountains, we've got grasslands, we've got a lot of varied environments. And I know that there's a lot of endangered species or, other sensitive resources here. And to the extent that actions are taking place in those resource areas, and depending on kind of the context of what that action is and where it is, additional reviews will be required. And you really have to make sure there's no impact. For example, if it's determined that, a tower needs to be built somewhere within the state, that would probably require an additional review to look at, okay, where is it going to be built? What are the impacts, to the extent that you find an issue with an endangered species or some kind of, maybe it's tribal legacy land. There's a variety of different environmental issues that you could, or historic preservation issues you could come across. There'll be a more thorough analysis at that site. So additional time and review will be necessary. But the goal being, if you've done a programmatic, although you'll continue to have to do additional analysis on some of these specific sites with resource areas that are of a lot more concern, hopefully you've cleared the way and streamlined the review of these other sites. You can kind of move things forward and make the burden of environmental review a little lighter as you try to deploy.
Yeah, Paula, it basically, and this is, I think, true either in an opt-in or opt-out scenario, it puts a premium on getting it right the first time. So when we analyze whether it's a certain year or the entire build-out, you want to get it right the first time, because what we found bogs things down is if you go back and you have to make, if you have to continually make a bunch of minor changes, because every change you have to go back and reanalyze things. So it really behooves you, whether it's us or they opt in with the partner, to get it right the first time. And then if you do sense some changes, you look at your changes thoughtfully and compress them, and so you're not constantly making changes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That makes sense.
Was somebody else saying something?
Yeah,
right,
Kim, this is Don. I have a question. Is there going to be any additional environmental studies if we use current existing resources, current existing towers? Will there have to be additional impact studies on those sites?
So it's going to depend on where the site is and what's actually being done at the site. And again, part of it will be an interesting nuance in the context of how it's dealt with if you assume RAN responsibility under a grant. But yeah, each site, FirstNet sites will need to be reviewed, even if it's just a tower. And we've got a process in place for doing that kind of works with the FCC process that's existing. But yeah, I mean, technically every site gets some kind of review, whether it requires an environmental assessment or some very much more complex analysis. Just depends on the context of the action. Some of the actions will be categorically excluded, meaning, if there really is no significant impact and it falls within these exclusions that have been established by FirstNet or FCC, through that whole process, then you'll probably be able to move forward without an additional, in-depth review at those sites. But again, there's some nuance there.
Yeah, and Don, basically what the PEIS says is that, so if we've got an existing site and literally all we're doing is climbing up it, hanging some new antenna and a radio on and plugging it into existing everything, that's probably not, we're probably not going to have to do a comprehensive review on that. If we have a site and we're going to be adding a generator and adding batteries and reinforcing the site and that kind of thing, then we probably will have to do more of a comprehensive review. It probably won't be as much as if we're actually building a tower, but it'll kind of be stared. Is that a fair generalization, Eli?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's fair to say everything gets a NEPA review, right? And to your point, Brian, the level of analysis just depends on what you're doing, where you're doing it, and how intense it is, you know, based on that location.
Anyone else with any questions? All right, well, thanks, Eli. We really appreciate you taking the time to join the call with us today. You know, we know in Colorado, I know in every state and territory this will be certainly impactful, but in Colorado, I think we're extra sensitive to that. So we thank you for your time.
No, I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone on the phone, and look forward to hopefully meeting some of you face-to-face at the meeting down in Lakewood.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Chief, if it's okay with you, I was just going to pause for a second and see if any other governing body folks joined the call that we weren't aware of. I have Joe, Lyle, Paula, Dawn, Kathy, yourself, and Brian. Any other governing body? Okay, then we still don't have a quorum, so we'll just go ahead and continue. Nope. We had the Metro Area Engagement Meeting on August 24th. That involved many of the Metro Area chiefs or leadership from Denver and the 9 surrounding counties. They were invited, as well as some IT folks. And FirstNet, including President TJ Kennedy, they brought Bill Schreier out. He used to be the Spock in Washington. He's now working at FirstNet. And then they brought Chief Burbank, the former chief from Salt Lake City, out to speak with the group. Do you want to just?
Yeah, it was nothing really. You know, they kind of just gave the standard dog and pony show. Yeah, there's a few IT folks there. I know Denver had their IT folks there. Aurora had their IT folks there. A little bit of discussion. I think most of the discussion kind of centered on some of the capabilities, some of the more specific technologies. You know, what can we do with devices? How does it? There's quite a bit of conversation on body cams and that kind of thing. So. Really kind of the same type of conversation. I did reach out and got some feedback from some of the folks and basically said, yeah, you know, it was pretty much more of the same. I don't know, Chief, if you had any feedback from the folks in Denver on the meeting or?
Pretty much the same thing. Most people found it to be fairly useless in the fact that it was pretty much the same information that's been out there for a while.
Yeah, so. Yeah, so FirstNet has been pushing us. They were trying to push us to do the same thing in the Springs. We reached out to the Springs and they basically said that they weren't interested. So we're probably going to, you know, we're talking about maybe doing something similar out in the Grand Junction area with Paula. We did just pass this information on to FirstNet that basically said, you know, we need more specifics. So based on that, you know, we'll kind of see what that looks like. But I think that would probably be the last thing we do is, you know, until we actually start getting into the state plan, is potentially something out in Grand Junction with the folks on the Western Slope and in Paula's area. So,
Brian, this is Don. I just think that's shows what our outreach has done for the state of Colorado, that we've reached a lot of people and they really can't give us any more information than we've already given our people. So kudos to you guys.
Well, I'd say thanks, Don, but I think we're not the only ones. We actually had our Western States call, which is now the Western States and a good chunk of the Midwest. You know, there was probably multiple states that basically said, yeah, we told them don't bother coming until you have something more to talk about. I think Minnesota said that. I think Oregon said that. So yeah, I think we're all getting kind of tired of the dog and pony show.
All right, state assumed RAN planning update. The FCC did publish in their daily digest a few weeks ago a notice of proposed rulemaking on the opt-out. It was a two-part notice, basically, where they accepted the process with the incumbent relocation, which is largely not impactful on Colorado. There were 4 counties impacted potentially by having to relocate from FirstNet spectrum. None of those counties applied for or received a grant. They're all going to manage it on their own. But the piece that was of interest that I included a link to in the agenda is the opt-out NPRM. So this is similar to the NTIA notice we talked about in the previous month. This is going to talk or allow comments about stepping through the process related to the FCC requirement to show technical interoperability with FirstNet if a state chooses to opt out. So do you want to just kind of high level what you've seen, or we can, Randy's on the phone too, we could ask him to.
Yeah, I reviewed it as much. Again, with the designation of Ken Tellman as our Special Attorney General, he's going to be kind of leading that up and can understand that much better than we can. But yeah, Randy, do you want to give just a really quick overview of what your thoughts were on the NPRM?
Sure. Yeah. So as Kim indicated, it had a quick sort of order on incumbents that isn't particularly relevant to Colorado, and a lot of what it talked about was sort of the role of the FCC in an opt-out scenario versus other organizations. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is, the commission sort of put forth a view that they would like to have a fairly minimal role, and that there shouldn't be a lot of overlap between what they do and what NTIA does. And I think that's actually, sort of my response was it was a pretty favorable, mechanism, and it really focuses on more technical issues. There were a couple of other things sort of in the overall document, like one talked about just the renewal of the FirstNet license, and should there be any kind of review at that point, and kind of a discussion from some parties that said we should sort of do a temperature check and see where FirstNet is in terms of rural build out at that point in time, and then others were saying just make it basically a rubber stamp. So that was an interesting other aspect that we could comment on that, and then definitely on the opt-out process.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Yeah, and I think I'd echo Randy's comments that I was, pleasantly surprised that the FCC seems to be basically taking their role very strict according to the statute, whereas the NTIA basically was positing they have complete authority to implement whatever they choose. That the FCC basically said, no, the law told us to look at this from a technical perspective and judge it based on the minimum technical requirements, and that's what we're going to do. So I think it's a positive, step. So any questions on those?
The public notice response, we sent the links to you between the last meeting. That included Washington's response when it was finally published. I have not, even though the NTIA extended their deadline to September 7th, I saw no additional responses from other states or interested parties. We did speak with our federal program officer for our grant, and he indicated that he did not know how or when the NTIA would be responding back to the comments, but he believed that there were some legal issues that would have to be addressed based on comments from states like Colorado, Washington, et cetera. So we'll keep you posted as we hear more information on that piece. Anything to add? Okay. Working groups. The business planning technical working groups met, and we've begun to flesh out questions we think need to be answered in the course of the state plan process. As we flesh out some of those topics within the groups, we'll bring back a final condensed list to all of you to ensure we're not missing anything. So that's the update on that. The operational group, Ed?
Operational, next time we get together, we're going to discuss, we had a good representation with the CTT, at the CTT meeting, and we really need to, as I was talking with some of the folks that were there, we need to kind of map out a strategy and what would be most impactful as we look toward either joining in the FirstNet ecosystem, or if it comes down to the state deciding to build its own radio access network. We want to make sure that we're not wasting time, but compiling some important information will give us a good operational picture on what what we need for operations out there in the field.
All right. Quickly on the projects, we are finalizing some of the tower heights those will be provided to Randy, and then he's working with us internally to do some additional assessments on wireless and fixed broadband usage. And so some of the agencies that participate on this call, we may be reaching out to you directly to help us fill out some survey information. That will inform two things. It will inform the work, the financial modeling work that's going to be done by Signals in support of an opt-out model, but it'll also allow us to look at some rural broadband planning efforts that Brian's been working on, and how that can impact that as well. So we are doing a broad, we will do a broad short survey request, but we also are going to target some folks and maybe try to step through with the people in your agencies who pay the bills or monitor the bills. So do you have anything to add on this, Sarah? Okay, Sarah will be in touch though. And Chief, did you drop off the line?
I did not. I was just getting ready to say, so I'll say bye now.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Thanks, bye.
So, Brian, I guess you're in charge of the agenda now.
Okay. So, Ed, next thing, outreach education updates. Ed.
So we won't bore you with the statistics. We will put those statistics in the minutes for your pleasure. Just to give you some of the highlights, some of the things we've got coming down the pike, a little more information than what we've shared in the past. I was asked to serve on the Fire Leadership Challenge Planning Committee this year, and so what that has led to is that at the Fire Leadership Conference in October, we'll be doing 3 sessions. We'll be doing one on wearable technology for firefighters. That'll be myself and Mark Golashevsky and Joe Martinet. I'll give you the rundown on them in just a second. And then secondly, we have another session called FirstNet, called More Communications Capabilities Coming Soon. It was actually made as a statement, but they probably should have put a question mark there. Anyway, that'll be Brian Shepard and then Mike Worrell, who is the subject matter expert for FirstNet. And then in the afternoon, we'll be doing using simulation training to enhance firefighter competencies. And just to give you a rundown, FirstNet has given us some resources to do some co-presentations. So, you know, basically we'll be giving the, you know, they'll be giving, you know, their spiel about what's going on the national level. But for example, in Brian's session, they'll be talking about the work that we've done in Colorado. And we're hoping that we can have a robust discussion with the firefighters and their chiefs, you know, to get some of the hard questions answered. We're not going to hold our breaths. But so Brian will be in that session with Mike Worrell. He is a really good guy. I had a chance to be with him at the Fire Rescue International, but he's a senior fire services advisor for FirstNet, and he comes from the Phoenix Fire Department, where he served 29 years. Mark Golashevsky, who is going to help with some of the emerging technology sessions. He is the director of applications for FirstNet. And then Joe Martinet currently leads the FirstNet as the CTO device. He leads the device team, and he's responsible for all the aspects of FirstNet device ecosystem. So the sessions that we're going to have, you know, in our discussions with them, you know, FirstNet's going to just, you know, do the black and white, and probably not going to be much in the vision casting. So that's kind of where we're going to come in, and we'll press the limit a little bit about, you know, where this technology long-term evolution can take us, not only with devices, but also with the transport networks and the capabilities that could bring. One other thing we want to mention, and I'm going to defer this to Kim here in just a second, but wanted her to talk about the Colorado NENA APCO presentation on October 9th. And since this is Brian and Kim's wheelhouse, we'll let them talk to that.
We'll be co-presenting with Bill Hinkle, the 911 subject matter expert. Unfortunately, it'll be Friday afternoon. We've just been changed to that time, but he'll be speaking about the nexus with Next Gen 911, and we'll be giving a general programmatic update.
Awesome. So 3 more events just wanted to mention to you. I'll be speaking at the 5G North American Conference, and we're going to talk about how LTE is transforming the way responders communicate. And we're going to talk about our demonstrations, including the FIS World Sea Championship, Wildlife Checkpoint, and then our XPSLTE event. And then I may be presenting in Kim's place the FirstNet applications workshop in College Station, since I'll already be down in Texas. And we're just waiting to hear back from Walt Magnuson on that. And then I'll be at the Smoke Symposium in Long Beach, California on the 17th. And we'll be talking about smart device technology and where that's going. Let me just give you a quick rundown on newsletter and website marketing. As you probably saw on Tuesday, the late summer newsletter came out. And so there is some important information in there. And so we ask that if you haven't opened that yet, please go in and take a look at it. Kim, is there anything in here that you want to highlight that that they need to pay attention to?
Yes.
All right. And then moving on, you'll see new changes to the website soon. We've had some meetings, and we've got some great ideas coming from Sarah, and we'll get those implemented, as many of them as we can, in the midst of all the other important stuff we're doing here concerning the NPSBN and our work here at FirstNet Colorado. Online training development, we do have just a slight development. We thought that we'd already be into testing that. And I talked with Kim, who is our contact at with Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service, and there was some confusion. She thought that we just wanted a link and to test it like we've been testing it here in the past, but we actually wanted it up on CodeTrain, and so she is feverishly trying to get that up on CodeTrain. As soon as we get the link, I will ask Kim if she will send that out to you. And we encourage you to go in and not only check to make sure links work and it's functional and makes sense, but also to make sure the information that we've got in there is accurate so that we can get that fixed. They're waiting on us. The only thing that I have left to get to them is a video, and that video is almost done and should be early next week. We'll get that to them. They'll get that uploaded. We will have some cool marketing stuff that we'll put out concerning this online training, because as I found in doing some work down in Texas at the FRI, you can really get people on a hook, especially, you know, first responders, people in dispatch. We all need CEs from time to time, whether they be medical or whatever. And one of the things that this training will have is you can get CEs if you go in and take the training. So we'll be putting together some marketing materials. It'll be kind of flashy, and we'll send people to the link so that they can get some CEs. XPSLTE in the newsletter, you saw that we had a recap in there. Sarah has put together a page, highlights our very own Eric Tate and a video that we've got on there. Some really good stuff. Go in and take a look at that. And then we've started planning for the XPSLTE 2017. And one of the things I'd like to throw out there for your suggestions is suggestions for venue. As I've been talking with a couple of folks, the suggestions that have come back so far are to have it again at the Adams County Government Center, and one person has suggested to maybe have it at Jefferson County Fairgrounds and the Conference Center. So if you have any thoughts or ideas about that, if you would, please let one of us know, and we'd like to hear your comments. And I'll leave it at that.
What time are we targeting for that?
Brian and I talked about targeting either the late part of May or the first part of June. And anyway, we'll have more details about that as they're available.
Okay. Any questions, Fred? All right. AdCom network update. Anyone from AdCom on? Is Joel or anyone? Anyone from AdCom?
Yeah, Joel's here.
Oh, okay. There you go, Joel. Any update?
Not too much. We've added some more devices. We're up over 100. I'm not even sure. I think about 120 right now. Yeah, we're adding more every day. Things are going well with the network. As far as the network itself is concerned, one of the things we've recognized is that we're actually coming up on end of life of the equipment. So we're starting to look at what next steps are going to be there. And I ended up filling in for Mike Brunswick at the APCO conference, doing the presentation on LTE updates for the Early Builders program there. Feedback was pretty positive for that. And that's pretty much all I got right now.
Is DIA completely online?
We have all the sites lit up, but we've run into a couple of issues there, so we're working through that right now. So no, DIA is not completely online, but we think we're just about got it fixed, and we should be pretty much online next month.
Great.
Good. Any questions for Joel? Okay. Legal issues, again, just to review, we finalized the agreement, the Special Attorney General agreement between Ken Feldman and the AG's office. So Ken will be, is now designated as a Special Attorney General for the FirstNet effort. We're finalizing just the actual billing agreements, which has to be done between OIT and Ken. So that we will hopefully be done here soon. And as I mentioned, so Ken will be leading the response to the FCC notice. And we'll be starting kind of the general legal review of the whole process as it applies to Colorado statute and so forth. So good news on that front. I think Ken will be a great asset to have on the team, and will provide some good insight. Any questions on that? Excellent. Old new business.
The only thing I wanted to share is that, and I will send the link when I send the meeting recording, the state of New Hampshire did agree to enter into a contract with Rivada, and that is to prepare a state plan for comparison. Rivada was selected as, if you all recall, they did an RFP last winter, and that RFP scored Rivada highest. The contract also allows that if New Hampshire were to opt out, and they're adamant that no decision has been made because no plan has been presented, then Rivada would have the exclusive right to negotiate an agreement to build out the prepared proposal that they do in the course of providing something to compare with FirstNet state plan when it's presented next year. So that's the only kind of old thing I have. We don't have any other new business that I know of. Anybody else have new business? Old or new business?
One quick update. So I was in attendance. There was a joint legislative hearing, a Colorado legislative hearing yesterday on 911. It was a task force that was created this last legislative session with the responsibility to investigate the next generation 911 efforts and make some recommendations to the rest of the legislature. I happened to be there just to kind of listen in and see what's going on, just to keep updated. And the issue of FirstNet did come up. And so I was impromptu, or I should say ad hoc, called upon by the chair, Senator Shuffle, to talk about AdCom, because or not AdCom, but FirstNet, just because several people had said, oh, we heard about this FirstNet thing and how does it impact 911? So I did give a quick, maybe 15-minute, Q&A with several of the legislators about kind of what we're doing with the FirstNet effort. Turns out some of them got some very poor information from FirstNet at an NCSL presentation, so I had to kind of clarify some of those things. And they did ask me to do a more in-depth presentation to them. So for next month, we'll send out that presentation, but I believe it's October 10th or 11th, October 11th, I will be presenting to this joint legislative task force that's focusing on 911. But the topic will be kind of what the potential synergies between 911 and FirstNet could be. So if anyone has any questions or thoughts or input on that, please feel free to reach out to me directly.
And Brian, I heard that you did a very good job, so thank you for speaking on our behalf. Also, it kind of lends itself toward the thought that next generation 911 and FirstNet, the technology that people are talking about, how they're going to integrate, how they're going to work together. So I think that's surprisingly good news that you were asked to speak on that, and that they're even asking the question at this point. So I think I'm happy about that. So people are talking.
Yeah, I actually was, the questions I had from the legislators were quite thoughtful and showed a genuine interest and really it wasn't political questions. It wasn't kind of your typical, sometimes you get where they just ask a question so that people think they're making a point. I mean, they were very thoughtful questions and they seemed very interested. Specifically, Senator Irene Aguiar from here in Denver. She's actually an emergency doctor So she's got a very good interest, or very acute interest in this. And then, as I said, Senator Shuffle, who's the outgoing majority leader of the Senate, Representative Donna Lantine was there. She seemed to be very interested in the subject as well. So I agree. You know, we've held off on really engaging the legislators to this point, and I think it kind of spurred this issue has spurred it a little sooner than we thought we might. But I think it will be a very good entry point. They seemed very interested in the technical aspects. They seemed interested in asking us, you know, what have you done with local jurisdictions? How have you been looking at, you know, needs assessments, that type of thing. So I agree with Paul that I think it is. I think this could be a very good thing for us. So.
Any other old or new business or questions or general discussion? Okay, then I just want to point out a couple of things. We have coordinated a visit with FirstNet to see their labs and PSCR this Monday the 19th at 1:30 and 3 p.m. respectively. If you are interested, we can still add names last minute, but I would need to know by tomorrow morning if you would like to attend those. If not, we can look to do that another time as well. We talked about the PEIS meeting on Tuesday the 20th in Lakewood, and then the next FOC meeting is tentatively planned for Phoenix, Arizona, the 3rd week of November. If FirstNet has a partner, they indicated they might have the partner present there. So if that's the case, hopefully that would be a very informative meeting. One last item is that October 20th, our next meeting at 2:30 p.m. actually essentially conflicts with all of the Fire Leadership Challenge presentations that Ed mentioned earlier. So I wanted to find out if the board would be open to looking at a date change on that. Logistically, it helps us manage the meeting a little better, and I can send out a doodle poll. We might just push it a week or something. And then that kind of segues into the fact that the November 17th meeting would be in direct conflict with the SPOC meeting as well as speaking engagements that Ed will be on. So in November, we may need to visit postponing that meeting until after the SPOC meeting when we have relevant information, which pushes us into right after Thanksgiving probably. But off the top of their heads, does anybody have general heartburn with perhaps pushing to the 4th Thursday in October? I will send a doodle poll to confirm.
I don't, yeah, go ahead and do a doodle poll. I think it's fine to look at changing both meetings.
Okay, I'll send a doodle poll for both then. And that's all we have. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, if you did not let me know you attended the meeting, could you just shoot me an email quickly after so we have it captured in the minutes? Otherwise, we thank everybody for their time.
Thank you.
And, thanks. Have a good day.
Bye.
Can you leave it open? Yes. Just end the recording. Thank you. Paula's going to stay on the line.
One second.
We'll just give it a second, Paula.
Sure.